Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. And today, well, today is Throat Punch Thursday.
Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Who's ready?
It's Throw Punch Thursday, bitch.
Folks, that is kind of how it goes down here on Thursdays. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program and encouraging your friends to do the same. We're going to go ahead and jump into today's stories, but before we do, we're going to do as we usually do. We're going to start off with a quick shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start with the folks over at Hitman Industries. Now, Hitman Industries makes rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you to purchase at any length. All you got to do is go to hitmanindustries.net. If you purchased an AR in the last few years, there's a good chance you already have one of their barrels. So why not get another one? Why not just head on out there and check them out today? Once again, hitmanindustries.net. And then we've got the California Republican Assembly working to help elect conservatives at all level of government, from school board all the way up to President of the United States. Ronald Reagan once referred to CRA as the conscience of the Republican Party. Want to find out why? All you have to do is go to cragop.org. That's cragop.org. Then we've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market at hawgholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com. Why do they call it that? Why is it spelled that way? Well, they like to help Americans wear guns. They like it so much, they're going to let you get a holster on discount. All you have to do is use the discount code The Rundown, all caps, no spaces, one word, just like it is right up there. You're going to get a discount on your hog holster today. And then finally, it's about that time to go get you some new gear, whether you're looking for boots, whether you're looking for hats, whether you're looking for backpacks, whether you're looking for optics, whatever you are looking for tactical, trust me, they have all things tactical except the gun at uscombatgear.com. Now, they specialize in group sales, so if you're with a Boy Scout troop, if you're a purchasing agent for your department or for your unit, you need to get on over to US Combat Gear right now. Huge selection, great discounts, especially on group discounts, and really great customer service. Check them out today, uscombatgear.com, the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun. Also want to remind you, if you are into the Second Amendment and you are into getting 2A news or Second Amendment news, you need to sign up for the 2A newsletter. That's right. This is the place that basically make it real simple for you. Rather than having to go to a bunch of different sites and find all of the news that's going on with the Second Amendment that day, you can have it all delivered to you in your inbox every weekday. We've got the stuff from the mainstream media, we got the stuff from the 2A media, we've got video blogs, we've got video news stories, we've got the podcasts, we have the deals. It's all there. All you have to do is go to 2anews.us, that's 2anews.us, hit that subscribe button right up there, and all you gotta do is put in your email address, and once again, you will receive all of this in your email box. And here's the best part about it, it's all free. It's all free. You don't got to do nothing except sign up. And when you want to unsubscribe, you can unsubscribe. But trust me, if you're like me and you want to make sure you don't miss any really good news, you need to make sure you get on over there to 2anews.us. Once again, 2anews.us. Also want to remind you, if you're watching this program during the 3 o'clock hour on the West Coast or during the 6 o'clock hour on the East Coast, then you are watching us live. And if you're watching us live, well, we want to hear from you. I'm taking your comments right over here. We just would love to hear, what you think about the program. Would love to hear what you think about the topic that we're talking about. Even if you disagree with us, that's all fine and dandy. We appreciate when you disagree with us, because my whole attitude about that is, well, when you disagree with us, well, that gives us the opportunity to mock you.
Oh wow, is that a mockingbird?
Man, is that a mockingbird? Is that a mockingbird?
That's right. We will mock you. All right, let's get into the news today. And obviously the big story today has to do with the Supreme Court. That's right, there are several big rulings, and we're going to report on 2 of them here today. But there are a couple of really big rulings relating to the well, 2 big rulings, period. One specifically relating to the Second Amendment. And that has to do with the Supreme Court striking down a rule a rule that they have in Hawaii. Now, specifically, they were mentioning Hawaii, but Hawaii's done this. New York has done this. California has done this. And they have this thing called the vampire rule, right? Now, keep in mind, when Bruin was passed, in Bruin, one of the things that they did allow, they just said, well, you know, they said you have a right to carry a firearm or the right to defend yourself outside of your home, right? So in other words, your right to keep and bear arms doesn't end at your property line or at your front door. But they did state that, you know, they do have the ability to actually put in place sensitive places, some sensitive places. Now, they made it very clear. You can't just declare every place to be a sensitive place, mainly, basically, ban firearms, any place in public. Say, okay, well, yeah, you can carry, you can get a permit to carry, but we're going to make it so that you can't really carry any place. And that's what places like California, New York, as well as Hawaii did. Well, that now has gone to the Supreme Court and it has been overthrown. Because by the way, one of the things that they did with that was this. They made it, and the reason why they call it the vampire rule is, before in California, if a business owner or any public place, if they had a sign up that said that they did not allow you to carry a firearm, they could restrict you from coming on their property with a firearm, even with a concealed carry permit. Even though you could carry legally, you're not allowed to be on their property if they say you're not allowed to carry a firearm. And, you know, while I disagree with businesses that do that, that's fair. If it's their private property, then they have a right to say whether or not. Now, the problem, though, is what the California, what the New York, as well as the Hawaiian law did was, it was assumed that they did not allow it, which basically meant if they didn't have a sign up specifically saying that you had permission to carry a firearm, then you couldn't go on that property, which basically most places don't have that sign, right? It assumed that you would then be guilty until proven innocent. Now, the problem with that is, and by the way, that's why they call it the vampire rule, because vampires are only allowed to go into a home or into a residence or into a dwelling if they've been invited. So in other words, you have to actively invite. Well, the Supreme Court has basically said, yeah, no, that is just not the case. Those laws are not constitutional. And this being reported over in Idaho News. And I wanted to pick this story because I didn't want to pick a partisan story, so I figured I'd pick a local news story that was reporting on it. But it says here, Attorney General Raul Labrador announced the United States Supreme Court struck down Hawaii's vampire rule during Wolford v. Lopez. In a 6-3 decision, the court struck down Hawaii's law known colloquially as the vampire rule, which barred concealed carry permit holders from entering private property open to the public with a firearm without first obtaining the owner's express permission. Violating the law was a misdemeanor punishable by up to a year in prison. The court held that while private property owners may restrict firearm possession on their property, the state itself cannot impose that restriction as a default rule for everyone. According to the news release from the Office of the Attorney General of California, New York, New Jersey, and Maryland have similar vampire rule laws restricting concealed carry on private property open to the public. And today's decision will serve as a controlling precedent for future legal challenges to those laws. And that's pretty simple. I mean, here's the thing. And once again, Bruin in this particular case is the controlling, is basically what they're basing this on. In other words, they went back and they looked and they said, okay, historically, yes, they did have the ability, and you did have some establishments in the founding that would say, well, no, we're going to have some sensitive places. We do have the ability to restrict your ability to possess a firearm on our property. Okay, fine. Now, you then can decide whether or not you want to go on that property. But when it's assumed, in other words, what they're saying here is that the government can't just assume that the property owner doesn't allow that. So if they don't want it, they have to explicitly state it. And there are some businesses that do explicitly state it. And that's the way it always kind of been here in California. And you know what I did? You know what I do? I don't do business with them. I don't go into those businesses. I don't go into Starbucks. Starbucks is a great example of one. I don't know of any others because once again, if there's someone who does it, then I just choose not to partake. And then, by the way, that's my right, not to do business with those businesses, not to frequent those establishments. Simple enough, right? And if an establishment doesn't want my business, then they have to explicitly state, I don't want your business. And when you do, you will get what you want, which is basically, yeah, no. Or see, now their attitudes, they're going to say, well, I want your business. I just don't want you to exercise your rights in my business. Well, if I can't exercise my rights in your business, then you don't want my business. It's that simple. What's interesting about this, though, is, and I'm waiting. I'm looking forward to reading some of the concurring opinions, because one of the things that these states did was they specifically did what Justice Thomas said not to do. And when Justice Thomas wrote the opinion on Bruin, he specifically said, in his opinion, you do not get to do this. You do not get to just blanket declare every place a sensitive place. I still, for the life of me, don't understand why parks are considered a quote-unquote sensitive place. It's a public place. It's not only a public place, it's a public place owned by the public, where the public frequents, where there is often instances where one individual may need to defend themselves. But you're not allowed to carry in a park. That makes no sense to me. It absolutely does not. By the way, I want to give a big shout out. Big Tobacco 109 is watching us on YouTube. It says here, he says, no expansion, face green smiling. I don't know what that means. No expansion. Anyway. And then nasty Democrats trying to limit our rights. Evidently, that's kind of his point. Is most of those who support restricting our fundamental right to keep and bear arms happen to be Democrats. Not that most Democrats don't believe in the right to keep and bear arms. Just most of those who tend to want to limit our rights do tend to be Democrats. And then we also got American Crossfire is tuned in as well. Also watching us on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in. By the way, big tobacco. I see it seems like a nice little stogie you got there. Would love to know of what tobacco are you partaking? Would love to know what style cigar you got going on over there. But anyway, folks, this is once again another big win, and we're going to continue to see big wins in the Second Amendment, in particular under this Supreme Court. Once again, this is just, and I know people are saying, oh, well, they're expanding our rights. It's not an expansion of our rights. This is literally just clarifying the text of the Constitution. This is literally just pointing out exactly what the Constitution says. I don't consider it an expansion of our rights. I consider it a defense of our rights. In other words, a clarification which makes it very clear what our fundamental rights are, in fact. All right, moving right along. Next up, let's go with this one over here. There we go. Bam. Okay, moving right along. Texas proposes Bible readings for K-12 students. Now I know, first thing y'all are going to say, separation of church and state, and let me just read the story, and then I'll give you my commentary on the flip side of that. Okay, so this is being reported by the folks over there out of Texas. It says here, Texas proposes Bible readings for K-12 students, reigniting century-old legal battle over their place in public schools. Here we go. In 2023, Texas passed a law aimed at improving K-12 students' reading. In part, it called for a required reading list to spell out, quote, at least one literary work to be taught at each grade level. An initial list named about 300 books, many of them from the Bible. The Texas State Board of Education then cut the list by 100 readings, but still included more than a dozen biblical texts. Debate over the Bible's place in classrooms, if any, has erupted since the list was published. At the board's April 10, 2026 meeting, All 9 Republican members preliminarily approved the materials, while 5 Democrats rejected the list. The board plans to take a final vote in June. Critics argue that mandatory Bible readings in public schools would violate the religion clauses in the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. American courts have considered similar questions for 150 years, with the answer often depending on the lesson's purpose. Courts, Bibles, and schools. The first reported case, well, I'm not even going to get into all of that detail. The point here is that, and I think there are a couple of things to point out about this decision. One, and a lot of people don't know this, but in many social studies classes, we actually do teach multiple world religions. In fact, the one world religion that we don't teach a lot of in our public schools is Christianity. 7th and 8th grade, in particular in social studies classes, we teach there are multiple chapters where students are taught about Islam. In fact, in some cases, and this has also been a very big deal, students are actually encouraged to participate in Muslim traditions, yada, yada, yada. They teach the 5 pillars of Islam, yada, 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 which is the actual teaching of the principles of the faith, right? And some teachers, some curriculums have gone as far as, actually having them engage in the practice of, the rituals and whatnot. I'm opposed to that. But I do think it's important, in particular for cultural context. I see nothing wrong with reading, because let's be honest, there is no book in the United States of America or in Western civilization that has a greater impact on tradition, on values, on history than the Bible, right? So once again, I believe the context in which you teach it is important. Now, if you're teaching it to promote the religion, I can see where people would have a problem with that in public schools. Having said that, if you are teaching at least the major faiths in the same way, then you're not necessarily making a preference of religion. So in other words, if you're doing like if you're teaching the 10 Commandments in the same way in which you're teaching the 5 pillars of Islam, if you're teaching the Torah in the same way in which you're teaching, I don't know if you get what I'm saying here, but the point once again being that by providing that, by teaching it in the same context, and you're not choosing one over the other, you can do them comparatively, but you're not picking one over the other. That I have no problem. If you're teaching it like that, then that I have no problem with. And I think legally, that's where the Supreme Court is going to come down on this. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is when you start getting into taking exams like the ACT or the SAT, I mean, a huge number of the references in a lot of those tests are actually biblical references. Most people don't know where a lot of that comes from. When you think of the golden rule, where does that come from? That's biblical. When you think of the reference of the term Sodom and Gomorrah, where does that come? When you think of David and Goliath, once again, that's a biblical principle, right? I mean, there's so many principles that are taught. I mean, that are part of literary texts, that are part of these exams that are biblical in nature, or that come from or based on the Bible. Heck, our form of government, whether it be our separation of powers, from judicial, legislative, and executive, or our levels of government from federal, state, and local, many of the concepts involved in our government, the right to individual rights and individual responsibility, all those are based on biblical principles. So kind of knowing those and involving and including the Bible as a part of curriculum seems kind of natural, since that's kind of the foundation where a lot of this stuff is coming from. One would guess. But, for those who don't want their kids to learn any religion, my whole thing is this: I don't mind Christianity being taught next to Islam or next to Buddhism or next to the other major faiths. The reason why I don't have a problem with it is because I believe that my faith stands up. I believe, no offense to those of you who are not Christian, but I will just say this: the truth next to a lie, the truth will win. That just happens to be my perspective. All right, moving along, we're going to talk about another interesting decision by the Supreme Court of the United States. And this one has to do with asylum seekers. And this is the one that basically says that, that the Trump administration will have the ability to turn back asylum seekers at the border. This being reported by the folks over at the New York Post. It says here, Supreme Court rules Trump can turn back asylum seekers at the U.S. border in major immigration win. The Supreme Court ruled Thursday that the Trump administration can turn away migrants who show up at the Mexican border before they apply for asylum. In a victory for the White House immigration crackdown, that prompted a tense exchange between two justices. The High Court ruled 6-3 in favor of a policy known as metering in use during President Trump's first term, as well as Barack Obama's administration, which capped the number of people who could apply for asylum each day. Immigration advocates had claimed that aliens should be considered to, quote, arrive in the U.S. once they reach the border, and argued the policy violated federal law, stating that migrants can apply for asylum upon entry regardless of whether they did so legally or illegally. Conservative Justice Samuel Alito agreed, writing in the majority opinion, in ordinary speech, no one would say that a person arrives in a place, for example, a house, a city, or a country before the person enters that place. The context in which the phrase arrives in the United States is used in immigration statutes at issue here supports an ordinary meaning reading. The administration had argued that the policy was necessary to deal with the massive influx of migrants at the southern border, adding that people who were initially turned away could always come back and attempt to apply later. Quote, "This is a tremendous win for the Trump administration. The rule of law and common sense," the White House spokesman Abigail Jackson said in a statement. Quote, "President Trump remains committed to lawfully restoring integrity of our immigration system, which includes tackling the egregious abuses to our asylum system that the prior administration encouraged. We will always put the American people first." And once again, I think that this is reasonable. How is it reasonable? Well, think about this. What was happening under the Biden administration was anybody who showed up could apply for asylum simply by showing up at the border. Now, once you apply for asylum, you're automatically granted entry into the United States, whether or not your claim had any real validity in the end or not. And in most cases, the overwhelming majority of cases where people right now, or at least have been coming lately and applying for asylum, does not meet the criteria of an asylum seeker. And so one of the things that they're trying to do is, I hate to say this, but you're trying to discourage people from falsely claiming asylum, from falsely clogging up the system. What they've done is they're coming and they're clogging up the system with false claims, so people who actually have legitimate claims are not able to get through. So you have to discourage people from doing that. If they know that there's a greater than small chance that when you show up at the border, you're going to get turned away and you're going to have to come back, it reduces the likelihood that people are going to falsely show up. Now, if you have a legitimate claim, you're more likely to still show up, because actually returning home, actually staying where you are, actually does create a danger for you, actually does create a threat for you. And so, once again, you're more likely to still show up. Not only that, you're more likely to return, if you miss the quota for that day. Now, the other part of the thing that this addresses is the fact that agents were basically being pulled away from actually enforcing the border, from border enforcement, to administer to do this stuff, to fill out these paperwork, to process these asylum claims. So in the meantime, you had areas of the border that were unguarded, where people were illegally coming across. And oh, by the way, they were sneaking in fentanyl, they were trafficking children. And so there was no real border. It was hard, it was more difficult for them to be able to enforce the border. Well, this solves that problem because we're only going to process so many, which means we're only going to need so much staff, which means then we're going to make sure that that the rest of the border is secure. Now, right now we're looking at dramatically low numbers. I mean, we're talking, less than 100,000 people. I think last year, basically nobody illegally came across the border. Right. Well, I won't say nobody. I'm not gonna say nobody illegally. Nobody got caught. How about that? There were almost no people who got across the border illegally that once again who got caught. They were all sent back. But what happened under the Biden administration was you had 200,000 a month were coming across the southern border. 200,000 people a month. Not just Mexicans, it was Venezuelans, it was Chinese, it was people from the Middle East, it was Haitians, it was people coming from all over the world were coming across our southern border and requesting asylum. And in most cases, it was because, well, the economy's not good where I live, or I can make more money in the United States. And yes, most of them were adult military-age males. The overwhelming majority of them were adult. These were not families that were coming, seeking a new life. I'm not saying that there weren't any. I'm saying that wasn't the majority of them. There were significant numbers of unaccompanied minors, many of which who disappeared into the United States, and many of which were sexually trafficked or trafficked and were doing child labor and a bunch of other stuff. It was all bad. It really was. It was all bad, just kind of in general. Well, a lot of that has now stopped because we're not providing incentives, or at least the federal government is not providing incentives for people to come to the country legally. By the way, I wanted to note, you noticed that in the article they refer to them as aliens, right? I want to be very clear. Alien is not a derogatory term, or at least it's not meant to be a derogatory term. It is literally a legal term, right? If you look, even the liberal justices, Justice Kagan, Justice Sotomayor refers to them as aliens. Aliens is someone not from this land, right? That's why they're called alien. There's literally a legal term. So for those of you who get mad when someone calls someone an alien or an illegal alien, if you get offended by that, I'm sorry, it's a legal term. Get mad at the law. But of course, some people are just going to choose to be offended. I hate to say it, but they are. Oh well, can't do nothing for you. Can't do nothing for you. All right, then we've got one more final story here, and this has to do with the post office, and specifically it has to do with mail-in ballots, because California, for example, is 100% mail-in ballots. Now, you can show up on the day of election and vote at the polls, but everyone gets sent a mail-in ballot. And this is part of what creates such significant problems and why it takes so long to count votes in California. Now, what I will say is that the reason why they say it takes so long is because when you do a mail-in ballot, there's certain things that have to happen, meaning it has to be in the right envelope. That envelope has to be signed and dated. If it's not, it gets set aside, and it has to be what's called cured, which means that somebody will usually notify the voter, or is supposed to notify the voter, that there's a problem with their ballot and they need to fix it. Anyway, but the real delay comes because they have to check each and every one by hand. They have to check and see, does it have a signature? They say they match the signatures. I bet you they don't, but they check every one. Is it signed and is it dated? Well, that in and of itself takes forever. Then you add to it the fact that they're not allowed to start counting them until the day of the election, until the elections close. So in other words, at 8 p.m. on Tuesday night on the election is when they can start counting the ballots that have been sent in via the mail, right? That first those first ones that you see that come across, those are not mail-in ballots. Those are the ballots that were put in that day, the first ones that came into the office, right? Those are the initial ballots that you see. So that's why, and because conservative voters tend to vote day of, that's why in so many elections you see Republicans either ahead or really close, or Republican numbers up on election night. But then as the counting goes on over weeks, you start to see those numbers change because younger voters, liberal voters tend to vote later, right? In some cases, dropping them in the mail on election day. And they then have up to a week before they receive them. And once again, then each and every one, gotta check the date, gotta check the signature. Anyway, the postal office has said, well, tell you what, because we're trying to figure out what's going on with this with the federal government. So this is really at the behest of the White House. Being reported by CNN, Postal Service won't deliver mail ballots for states that don't hand over voter lists under plan for Trump directive. It says here, state election officials could soon face a stark choice: hand over voter lists to Trump administration or risk losing Postal Service delivery for mail-in ballots. The dilemma stems from newly proposed U.S. Postal Service rules that seek to comply with an executive order President Donald Trump signed this spring to crack down on mail-in voting. It's more crack down on mail voter fraud. Anyway, if courts let the orders stand, it would give the federal government an unprecedented role in elections and could put even more voter data in the hands of Trump officials searching for supposed election fraud. The proposed rules lay out new conditions that states would have to meet to send ballots through the mail, including giving the agency lists of all voters set to receive ballots. So far, 23 Democrat-led states and the District of Columbia are suing, as are Democratic Party leaders and nonpartisan voter advocacy groups. Yeah, these are liberal voter advocacy groups, setting up a potentially active summer of high-stakes judicial rulings. The Trump administration cleared an initial legal hurdle last month when a federal judge in Washington, D.C., who is overseeing one set of the cases, declined to block Trump's executive order, allowing the Postal Service to begin implementing it. Now, here's the thing, folks, and they've already determined, for example, in places like California, it's been estimated something like 850,000 people are on the voter rolls in California that shouldn't be. These are a combination of people who've moved out of the state, right? So they shouldn't be on California voter rolls. These are people who have died, right? And these are also some people who are not citizens. And the thing is this, is that while it's normally not necessarily as big of an issue if they're on the voter rolls, because then they have to then actively go to the polls to vote. In California, where they mail the ballot to you no matter what, well, okay, if I'm not supposed to be on the voter rolls, but I know I'm not a citizen, but someone sends me a ballot, do I then think, well, I guess I must be able to vote, right? If someone sends a ballot to someone who doesn't live at that particular address anymore, does it then create the opportunity for someone to then fill out that ballot and turn it in anyway? Right? You have organizations, and it's already been proven in Southern California, or I'm sorry, clarify, it's been accused, not proven. But there are groups being investigated who are basically going out and paying homeless people on Skid Row to register to vote and then filling out their ballots for them. Right? These are all things that lead to, that open the door to election fraud. And the Trump administration is trying to find out how broad is this? How many of these people who are, once again, the easiest ones to figure out are the people who left California, right? Or the people who have moved, right? Or the people who aren't really citizens, who aren't citizens and shouldn't be eligible to vote. What is so wrong with them being able to look and identify this? Every single time someone has tried to investigate or look into voter fraud, Democrats, in particular California Democrats, have fought it. I mean, you had an instance in Riverside County where the sheriff, basically someone came to him and said, look, we have X number of registered voters in Riverside County. X plus 50,000 absentee ballots were turned in. How do we have more absentee ballots or voting but mail-in ballots? How do we have more mail-in ballots than we have actual voters? And he wanted to hold on to the actual voter rolls and ballots so that he could compare the two. He wanted to hold on to the ballots, so they could look and say, okay, let's count the number of ballots. Let's count the things. And then if we find out that there's an overage, let's then investigate them to find out where that overage came from. That sounds reasonable, right? Well, evidently not to Attorney General Rob Bonta. According to the Attorney General Rob Bonta, you don't get to investigate. You don't get to look into it. You don't get to find out if people who are registered to vote, who aren't supposed to be registered to vote, can actually vote. Anyway, it's trying to do an investigation is not equal to voter suppression. And that's what really gets me here is they're trying to make it out that, okay, well, if I want to look into something, if something doesn't quite smell, because who knows, maybe the vote count is wrong. I don't know that it is. I don't know that it isn't. But I do know that if I don't actually look into it, I'll never know. But they don't really care about actually knowing. And that right there, my friends, is the real problem. All right, folks, that now brings us to our parting shots. Parting shots are brought to you by Hog Holsters. Go to hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces, one word. Get your Hog holster today. All right, this first one here is you might have seen the videos. They've been going viral. People from other countries here for the World Cup, enjoying America, enjoying what it is to be American. And you're going to love this one. This one is not a Waffle House video. They're not talking about Waffle House. They're talking about another premier American establishment, Walmart. And you will see, they got a kind of a point here.
This is why I love Walmart. Not only can you buy your food, but you can also come to the Freedom Machine area. Check this out.
Those are rifles, in case you were wondering.
Anywhere where you can come and get a pint of milk, a loaf of bread, and a Freedom Machine is good for me.
Yeah, I agree with them. Now, unfortunately, you cannot buy firearms in the Walmart in California. Once again, unfortunately. Now, just recently, we celebrated Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a holiday where we celebrate in Texas, where they did not know that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed and the slaves were freed. And this kind of commemorates that day. But it's really not about that. It's really about, the full recognition of the promise of the Declaration of Independence, of all people being free. Anyway, this brother here, though, has an interesting story to tell about the celebration of Juneteenth.
Why are white people taking off work on Juneteenth? It's at the bank. I'm in line to see a teller. There's only one teller working, white woman. She's helping an elderly black man. I'm eavesdropping on their conversation. Now listen, I couldn't hear what he said first, but what she said back was, oh, we won't be open that day because we'll be observing Juneteenth. And then the black dude went, the f*** is that? Her reaction, priceless. She goes, what is Juneteenth? He goes, yeah, the f*** is Juneteenth? He doubles down. She answers it. She goes, it's a holiday. For you and will be observing it. And I went, bravo fucking Bo, Sharon. That is technically correct. Not offensive, kept her job. How the fuck did she pull that off on the spot? The story should be over right there, right? Bro, what this dude said back, I lost it. He goes, then why y'all niggas celebrating it? What? I remember looking around the bank like, is nobody else seeing this shit? So she says, we won't be open on Juneteenth. He goes, why y'all niggas celebrating it? And my question is he making a good point? I never thought about that till he said that. Why are white people taking off work on Juneteenth? Listen, I'm not saying white people don't deserve days off. Take them off. But is this the one? It's kind of the opposite of the way to celebrate the holiday, no? Listen, if you don't know what Juneteenth is, I'll make it super simple. Juneteenth commemorates the last official day of slavery. Here's my theory, right? If you're Christian, you don't celebrate the Jewish holidays. If you're not Chinese, you don't celebrate the Chinese New Year. If we really want to support and celebrate Juneteenth the correct way, I think a great way for us to all do that is black people should be off work that day. But everybody should be forced to watch an NBA Finals basketball game with just the white players playing.
He's kind of got a point. Not saying, just saying. All right, then, well, let's, okay. Nick Freitas, I love this dude. I can't even begin to fully express how appropriately he utilizes the terminology in this particular video that he does, and I don't even want to really describe it because I will not do it justice. Check it out.
Are you a cisgendered heterosexual male that feels completely outgunned in the intersectional arms race that is your HR department? Well, not to worry, because we've got the product for you. It's called gender fluidity, and it's a kind of woke passport to the top of the grievance pyramid. How does it work? We don't really know. How do you know you have it? Well, you just simply declare it. What if someone questions you? Well, you call them a bigot and sue them. Works every time.
Yeah. I'm just going to leave that right there. And then this last one, this is Ben Shapiro. I like Ben. I think he, his ability to communicate values and logic are, I don't want to say that they're unparalleled, but there are few who do it better.
Shouldn't we have the ability to go to a higher level where we are able to overcome societal constructs that have been created and create something in which each individual is happy?
So I don't think biology is a social construct, and I think the greatest way of finding unhappiness in your life is to go to direct war with biological reality. This is a very stupid thing. If you walk off the 99th floor of a building saying we've developed in our society to the point where really we should be able to transcend the laws of physics, about halfway down you're going to realize this is a very bad idea.
And there you go. I don't even think I need to explain that. And if I do have to explain it, you'd never get it anyway. All right, folks. Well, that's going to be it for today's program. But before we go, we're going to give one more quick shout out to our sponsors. We've got Hitman Industries rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you to purchase at hitmanindustries.net. We got the California Republican Assembly, the conscience of the Republican Party. Check them out at cragop.org. We've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market at hawgholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com, helping Americans wear guns. And then finally, the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun, and that would be at uscombatgear.com. And with that, we're going to go ahead and call it a day. We'll be back tomorrow on Free for All Friday. Then y'all have fun, stay safe, and we will see you mañana.